Somewhere in your 50s, you stop faking it, right? Not just in bed, I mean, everywhere. And today, we're going to find out what you actually want instead. So, three things today that I need you to hang with me until the end. I'm going to name the exact physiological mechanism that's been running your erotic life without your permission. I'm going to show you what erotic sovereignty actually is in your body, not as a concept, but as a physiological state you can feel and access. And I'm going to give you two practices that start moving you out of performing desire, performing, and into inhabiting desire. That's what we're going to do today, so let's get to it. So see, there's a particular kind of exhaustion that I have sat with in women across 30 years of clinical practice. And it's not the exhaustion of wanting too much. It is the exhaustion of wanting for decades in a direction that was never actually theirs. So here's what I want you to hear clearly. You did not lose your desire. You lost access to it. Those are not the same thing, and that distinction is going to matter to you before this episode is over. Most of us were handed an erotic script before we ever had the chance to write our own. It told us what desire was supposed to look like, who it was supposed to be directed toward, how much visible it was permitted to be. How visible, not how much visible, but there could be a much in there, but how visible we were allowed to show our desire and how much pleasure we were allowed to claim before it became inconvenient for someone else. And we followed that script, right? I mean, we're good, girl. We followed it faithfully. We were really good at it. And then somewhere around 50, the script stopped holding. The children left, or the marriage changed, or the body changed, or grief arrived, or simply enough years accumulated that we started looking at the life we had built and thinking, whose is this exactly? Who decided this was what I wanted? So, girl, this is not a midlife crisis. This, my friend, is a midlife reckoning. And the difference matters. A crisis is something you survive and return from. A reckoning is something that changes what you return to. So the question is whether you have the internal framework to meet it. And today, I'm giving you that framework. So, off to our research, as I love. There is a field of research in psychology called self-determination. And it's a theory. And it was developed by Edward Deci and Richard Ryan. And it identifies autonomy as one of three non-negotiable psychological needs for human well-being. Not a preference, it's a need. And autonomy here doesn't mean independence from other people. It means that the desire you pursue, that it feels genuinely self-endorsed. No matter what the desire is, it's self-endorsed. That these desires originate from inside you rather than from pressure and obligation or the quiet terror of disappointing someone. You know how we are. I mean, after our 50s, it gets better, but there's been an allostatic load for years of us trying to please others, not wanting to disappoint. So then we have researcher Veronica Smith, who examined the relationship between self-determination and sexual experience. And she found something that should stop you cold. On days when people experience genuine autonomy in their sexual interactions, they reported significantly more positive, satisfying experiences than on days when they were acting from obligation or social pressure. See, the physical act was identical. What changed was ownership. So, a 2022 qualitative study of midlife women's sexual experiences found the same theme surfacing again and again. Participants described a growing demand for what the researchers called context dependence in desire. And we've talked about this a lot. See, their desire was not disappearing. It was becoming more discerning, more specific, less willing to perform on cue for an audience that had never fully honored it. And I need you to hear that. Your desire did not leave. It got more honest. And honesty, when you have been trained for decades to perform instead, can feel like absence. When we act from obligation, from what the self-determination theory calls introjected regulation, which means doing something because you feel you have to rather than because you genuinely want to, the body registers this as coercion, mild, ambient, socially sanctioned coercion, acceptable coercion, but coercion nonetheless. And the body responds the only way it knows how. It withdraws. And I'm not saying dramatically, just quietly, steadily, over time. The aliveness drains out of the erotic experience because the erotic experience has been built on someone else's ground. Erotic sovereignty begins the moment you reclaim that ground as yours. So I want to be precise here because sovereignty is one of those words that can float into abstraction, and I'm not interested in abstraction for us. I'm interested in what happens in your body when you're actually living it. Erotic sovereignty is a nervous system state. Specifically, it is ventral vagal activation, the safety and social engagement state. And combined with what I call solar plexus coherence, it's genuine connection. That is the combination of regulated, open safety and a clear, grounded sense of your own identity and will. You are your solar plexus, you're empowered, you have agency. And that's important. For desire to come back online, she has to feel very safe and welcome. Because that's a very vulnerable state, it can be. And so we have to feel really safe in our body. But see, when a woman is in the state of being connected with that solar plexus and that ventral vagal being, your nervous system being very regulated, you're not performing. You're not monitoring yourself from the outside. You're not tracking your partner's approval. You're not managing his or her disappointment or calculating whether you've been sufficiently responsive. You're being present. You know what you want. You either move toward it or you clearly and accurately and unapologetically say no to what you do not want. Both acts are sovereignty. Both require the same internal ground. And here's the one that lands the hardest with the women I work with. You can be physically present in an erotic encounter and be entirely absent from it. You can be going through every correct motion and be nowhere near your own desire. You can be technically responsive and be completely self-erased. And no one in the room, including you, after enough years, can necessarily tell the difference. Let's park there for just a hot minute. Just take that in. So here's what I need you to hear. It's not a moral failure by any circumstance. This is a nervous system problem. And a woman who has learned over decades that her desire was less important, or that expressing it made her vulnerable to judgment, or that her body was seen as an object to be evaluated rather than a subject to be inhabited, will have neural pathways deeply grooved toward self-erasure in erotic contexts. The work of sovereignty is not simply deciding to want what you want. It is creating the neurological safety to feel it, to express it, and to refuse to apologize for it. And that is what we're doing. That is what all of this is. So, in chakra psychology, the third energy center, the solar plexus, it's right below your rib cage. That governs personal will, it governs agency, and the capacity to act from self-endorsement rather than external pressure. The Sanskrit name for this solar plexus area translates to lustrous gem. Isn't that fun? Lustrous gem. And I want you to sit with that image because it is not describing something you need to build. It is describing something that is already there, that has been girl has been there the entire time, that has simply been asked to stay small. So when your solar plexus is activated, a woman has a felt sense of authority in her own life. She does not need permission. She does not need to be told her desire is acceptable before she allows herself to feel it. She knows the difference between what genuinely belongs to her and what has been deposited there by a culture that has never been entirely comfortable with a woman who wants things without apology. So when your solar plexus is suppressed, and this is what I see in so many of us gals over 50, the fire goes underground. It doesn't disappear. Underground fire does not disappear. It shows up as exhaustion, resentment, which is a sacred emotion, and as the particular flat anger of a woman who has been endlessly helpful without ever being truly seen. When the fire of your solar plexus has nowhere to go, outward turns inward, and it burns what it cannot afford to express. Now here's the relationship you need to understand. Your solar plexus sits above your sacral chakra, and that's your seat of pleasure, flow, and exotic aliveness. And your solar plexus provides the identity that chooses desire, and your sacral chakra provides the pleasure that desire moves through. You cannot have a fully inhabited erotic life with a depleted solar plexus. The water needs the fire. Desire needs an author. And why? Well, this erotic sovereignty is never first about the bedroom. It's about the entire posture of your life. Whether you speak from your own ground, if you tolerate the relationships and obligations that require you to be smaller than you actually are, if you give yourself permission to take up space, to want things, to be inconvenient in your desire. The bedroom is a mirror. It reflects everything that is happening everywhere else. So I want to teach you the fire breath boundary. And it's a practice. It activates your solar plexus through breath and movement and begins retraining your nervous system away from the chronic self-erasure, with that pattern that's become chronic. And it runs quietly in the background. We don't even recognize it's there 95% of the time. So you sit upright or stand, and you place one hand on your solar plexus just below your ribs, and you feel the temperature there. If it feels neutral or cool, or you cannot feel much at all, that's just information. That is the contracted fire telling you it has been asked to stay small for a really long time, and we're going to give it permission to move. So I want you to take a sharp inhale through your nose and simultaneously draw your navel back towards your spine and release with a sharp exhale. And let's make that exhale through your mouth. Letting the belly push forward. Inhale sharp, pull in. Exhale sharp, push out. Do that 10 repetitions at a steady, moderate pace. After the 10th one, I need you to take a long, slow inhale, hold briefly at the top, and then release a slow, audible exhale through the mouth. Ooh, make that sound. That vagus nerve needs that. On that exhale, notice if there's any other sound that wants to come with it. Not a performance, but many women tell me after the fire breath activation that something has been waiting at the threshold of the exhale. A sigh, a release, something that's been held there longer than it realized. Do that 3 rounds in total, and then sit quiet for 30 seconds and notice what shifted. Even the smallest change in warmth or presence in your solar plexus is a beginning of that solar plexus to remember itself. And girl, there is no way to do this wrong. If you feel nothing, that's fine. That's just data. Don't give up. Try again. Do this before any situation that asks you to negotiate what you want. Before a difficult conversation, before an intimate encounter, before any moment where you might otherwise default to your old script instead of your own ground. And the second activity I've designed for you is the desire declaration. And this is a journaling practice. And I need you to approach it with deliberate boldness. This is not a careful document. This is the first draft of your erotic authority. Write at the top of the page what I actually want. Not what's appropriate, screw that. Not what I should want, screw that. That's someone's rule, not yours, that's running in your life that you need to fire. Not what my partner wants me to want. He doesn't want that. She doesn't want that. They want you to show up present, alive, fully embodied. What I actually want. And you write for 15 minutes without stopping. You let it be imperfect. You let it be large and a little embarrassing. And you let yourself want things that feel like too much. And you name things that have never had the permission to be named before. And when you're finished, you read it back out loud to yourself. underline the sentences that feel the most true and the most frightening to claim. Those sentences are living closest to your actual desire center. Those are the ones that matter. Then write one sentence at the bottom of the page that begins, I am a woman who has the right, and complete it. I am a woman who has the right to, and complete it. And girl, you let that be true, and you let that be yours. This is not a one-time exercise. This is a daily recalibration, a return again and again to what you actually want before you agree to perform what someone else thinks you should. Okay, so here's what you learned today. 1, girl, you didn't lose desire. You lost access. The science of self-determination theory confirms that desire performed from obligation registers in the body as coercion. And the body's response to coercion is quiet, steady withdrawal. That is what happened. It was not you, it was the script. 2, erotic sovereignty is a physiological state, not a philosophy. It requires safety and solar plexus coherence, a regulated nervous system, and a fired, clear sense of self. You can't think your way into it. You can only feel your way in. The solar plexus, your fire center, is where desire gets its author. Without it, desire has no one making the choices. Without it, I mean, it's just a car without a driver. With it, desire has direction, heat, and the unapologetic clarity that makes intimacy feel like something rather than something you just go through. 4, the bedroom is a mirror. Hear that? Underline that. Think about that. Maybe write about that. What you allow yourself in your erotic life is exactly what you allow yourself elsewhere. Sovereignty in one place builds sovereignty in the other. Again, save that, listen to that again. And you can begin today with breath, with journaling, with radical, deliberate decision to find out what you actually want and to let that answer matter. And remember, in my book, Are We Going to Have Sex or What? It goes into this territory at full depth, the science, the somatic practice, the complete framework for rebuilding desire on your ground. And it's on my website or over at Amazon. But girl, I need you to stay dangerous. I need you to stay gorgeous. And I mean it. Your bedroom is a mirror. I need you to think about that. I will see you on Friday. Adios.